Hi, my name's Charlotte and I like to read. I like to read so much that I managed to finish 16 books in July, and now I'm going to tell you my thoughts and go over the books that I read. The first book that I finished this month was Downforce by Hannah Lilly. So it's the first book in a series about Formula One driver romances. I absolutely adored the characters in this book. Jonah is grumpy, Liv is very, very sweet. She's a Formula One track presenter. She talks about all the people on Formula One. Jonah's not having a great start to the season. He's in a bit of a flunk. And though he finds Liv super, super hot, he is also frustrated because she obviously has to say when he's not doing great either. It becomes I don't want to call them enemies because they just had a few arguments. But it's an enemies to lovers type romance. My main issue was it was longer than it really needed to be. So overall it was almost 500 pages. It definitely could have been 100 to 200 pages less. They both like each other. There is forced proximity. There is no one bed trope. But it's very much one room trope. It was a fun read. I'd love to say it was a fun quick read, but it did drag slightly. And there was a lot of sexism within the workplace with her being a female working in a men's sport. But overall I enjoyed it. The next book that I finished was A Proposal They Can't Refuse. This is by Natalie Kanner. I'm so sorry for butchering names. And this is another first book in a series. I'm not sure if the other books are out yet. And again, another that was kind of enemies to lovers. There is a fake engagement. There's not quite a fake marriage, but there's definitely a fake engagement in this book. And it was a quick read. It was just over 300 pages long, and it definitely felt like it. I didn't enjoy the characters as much as I did in Downforce, but I still really, really enjoyed these characters. And Naughty Naughty Abuelo, her granddad, who basically blackmailed her into getting engaged to, I think it was his friend's grandson, but it's also somebody that she used to fancy him. It was something like this. It's kind of messy, but it's a very fun read. Going off track and away from romance for a second, I read A Talent for Murder by Peter Swanson. This is the third book in the Kind Worth Killing series, which I absolutely loved the first one. The second one I was a bit and I was a bit tentative to read this one because I was like, why continue on with this book? The first book was great, the second book needed to not happen. Actually, I quite enjoyed the third book. It's about a woman who thinks she calls on Lily to help her because she thinks a man that she's just married is a serial killer. The twist wasn't super twisty, but it was still enjoyable without giving too much away, because everybody knows that in mystery murder type books there's always some plot twist. It wasn't super twisty, but it was a good twist. It was fun. Okay, so the next books that I read, we're back to romance now, and I'm just gonna lump all these together even though I did not read them sequentially. By Anna Huang. King of Wrath, King of Pride, King of Greed, and King of Sloth. So the 4 books. So the first book I absolutely loved. Vivian was super, super sweet. Then we had, obviously, the grump of Dante. He gets blackmailed into having a fake marriage with Viv, and she has no idea about it. This is all her family's doing. No. Okay, she does have an idea about it. She knows it's not a real marriage, but she does not know about the blackmail. She just thinks that Dante just wants to marry somebody of upper class type ick. Do you know what I mean? It's fun to see Dante be like, no, I'm not interested, I just want to get this blackmail away, and I'm trying to like ruin this relationship, thinking that she just wants to get married to somebody that's like super rich and things like this. It made me very sad, the way her family were towards her, but it was a fun read. In the first book, I really enjoyed Kai and Isabella's separate personalities being around their friends. However, together I just didn't quite enjoy them as much. In the first book, Kai seemed like really cheeky and really like to the point. It was just kind of boring. Whereas then I think they made Isabella the opposite and very like eccentric and like woo, to be like opposites attract type thing. And again, it's very societal. It's very like, she's beneath you, you shouldn't be dating this person. There's pretty sure a 3rd act breakup that I hate. Just miscommunication in general really, really does my head in. And she was always trying to like push him away, and he was like, okay. Like, and then there was also like a subplot going on where he was trying to like become the CEO of his company because his mother decided to step down randomly. It was, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I had anticipated, and as much as I enjoyed the first. The third book, I would say, is one of my biggest disappointments for the month. So bear with me. Loved it. Give it 4 stars. That's a 5. Give it 4 stars. So throughout the second book, Anna was hinting that Dominic and Alessandra were very on the rocks. This is a couple that have been together coming up 10 years, so not quite 10 years. And throughout the second book, the little bits that we've seen of them, they did not seem happy. Well, Alessandra didn't seem happy. So this third book was marriage in crisis type vibe. I'm going to win you back. He misses their 10-year anniversary, and she just decides that's enough, I am done. And he really, really, really needed to grovel. We didn't get that. He definitely came across as sorry, and then a couple of things happen, and even though he doesn't want to, he does eventually sign the divorce papers. And she jets off somewhere, and he goes, do you know what will be a really good idea? Follow her. And it was very frustrating because I felt like he needed to be on his knees constantly, begging her, wanting her back. And although he had like an air of desperation, he was just not desperate enough for my liking. I wanted this man to be begging, to be like crying, to be like, I cannot live if I'm without you. That's a little bit toxic, so maybe not that much, but I needed more. And again, it was a very lengthy book for what we got, and this one felt quite sluggish to me. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoy Alessandra a lot from the first 2 books. I think she was briefly in the first book a little bit. So I enjoyed her personality anyway. She is like the softest little softie that you will ever meet. And I'm glad she stood up for herself. But Dom needed to step up more. So then the final book of that series that I've read, because the rest aren't out, was King of Sloth. Now, this book redeemed. Okay. Again, I find any romance book that's over like 300, 350 pages to be a bit too long. But I loved this. Xavier is typical-ish rich boy who does nothing for a living and literally just lives off his father's money. But he has his own like little demons, which you're thinking, typical. But his story was just like quite heartbreaking. And then you've got Sloane, who is the grumpy one to Xavier's sunshine, and she is a badass businesswoman. She said fuck you to her family when they were like, no, you should just marry somebody rich and have a husband and that's your life. And she was like, no bitches, I want a job, I want a career, I want to do this, jog on, and ended up getting disowned by them, which is lovely. She doesn't keep in contact with her family except one person, which melted me a little bit. But I don't really know what else there is to say, like, to not ruin it, but I absolutely loved their banter, and I love flirty arguing. It's just... The next book I'm going to talk about is Would Like to Meet by Rachel Winters, I believe. Yes. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was kind of forgettable. So she works at a film agency and she's helping a writer create a romance script, even though he doesn't normally work in that genre. He's just one of their favourite writers. So starting off, that bit of like the plot just made no sense to me. Like, why are you getting a non-romance author to write a romantic comedy or romance type film show? I don't know what they were. I can't remember, honestly. Basically, as you expect, she decides to prove that romance is real and go for all the romantic cliches, and she tries to prove that they do work. But she is so awkward that it's not quite working. She's got like there's a kind of a love triangle type thing going on, and there's also a plot twist at the end that did make me gasp, and I was like, what the actual fuck happened there? But apart from that, it was I did give it a 4, but it was on the lower side of a 4, so it's probably more of a 3.5. I mostly enjoyed the characters, except for I thought the author writer person was very pompous, and she was so ditzy that it kind of annoyed me a little bit. But it was a fun read and quick-ish. Again, it was over 300, so it's 367 pages on the Kindle. I did not read it on Kindle. I listened to the book, and the narrator was great. I just wished there was a little more depth to the main character and less accident prone. Being somebody accident prone myself, she puts herself in these situations, and she should know, being an accident prone person, that you avoid certain situations. She did not. I am pretty sure I am going to get doxed for this. The next book that I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. It being a fan favourite. 4 stars from me. I learned to enjoy it. However, I think it took me over a year to actually finish. I started it last year and I found it rather slow. I thought the 2 main characters were a little boring. I get why people love it. Enemies to lovers. Enemies to lovers. Once I started it again and actually pushed myself through it, I think after the first 100 pages or so, I actually did pick up and it was quite fun, and I think I like the romance aspect more than the enemies aspect and the writing and books. And I think considering she seemed like such a hard-faced person, Nora didn't take the book that was kind of being wrote about her badly. However, it's so weird, like, to be in that situation, because if anybody ever wrote a book about me, I'd also be like, especially how she automatically knew it was about her and it was just like a slight name change, and I would just be like, yeah, what the fuck you doing, bro? Like, it must be so hard to work in publishing and have to semi-lick these people's asses rather than just calling them out and being like, why are you doing this? Like, what are you getting out of this? Like, is your imagination so bad that you have to try and base someone off your editor? The next books that I read were the Divine Rivals duology. So Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. Oh my god, I ate these books up. I absolutely loved them. So it's academic rivals to lovers in the first book. The fact that there's going to be some mild spoilers here, so I'm very sorry. So the fact that he was responding to her letters through these magical typewriters, and he was so sweet, and he fell in love first. He fell head over heels for her first, 100%. And the ending of the first book had me absolutely sobbing my heart out. I was screaming. I was so upset. I was friggin' fuming right at the end of this first book that I had to automatically so straight away pick up the second book, because oh my god, you could not leave it like that. The second book, for the first so many pages, absolutely tore my heart out again. I was literally just sat like reading with like slight little bubbly tears in my eyes, wanting these 2 characters to find their way back to each other. I loved the writing, I loved the characters, I loved all the secondary, the tertiary characters as well. Like, everybody had their own like little personality, their little part to play in the books. It was so good. Like, this will be a book that I will reread because I just absolutely loved them. They are YA, I think. So they are suitable for younger audiences as well, which I absolutely love. The magic system was beautiful. I could not put these two down, and I would recommend them to a lot of fantasy, romantasy lovers that want quick, fun, emotional reads to pick up these books and just devour them like I did. Love them. The next book I read was Passion and Venom by Shannara Williams. I don't want to be too harsh about this and yuck somebody else's yum. It is a dark romance. So the basic premise is she marries this dodgy guy, let's just say. I can't even remember if he is part of one mafia or not, so let's just say he's a bit dodgy. She marries him, and on their wedding day, as they are driving away to an airport or just to their honeymoon, the car gets attacked, he gets murdered, and she gets stolen away. I'm pretty sure that's the first chapter. So there is a prologue, and I was like, what on earth has got to do with anything? Like, this is... where has this come from? What's this got to do? Like, whoa. The prologue was like, sweet kids and like, you will protect her, you will love her type thing. And then all of a sudden, it's about who I assume was the girl, the young girl, but it's definitely not the guy because he's got a completely different name. And then he's just been murdered, so great. And it is a very short book, but it was very, very long, if you get me. I really didn't enjoy it. And I think it could just personally be me. I could not fall for a man who has and is continuously torturing me. I am more of a treat me like a princess and you will have me giggling, rather than slap me around like a whore and I will be horny for you. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, no. It just wasn't my vibe. Could be yours. The next book I read was Twin Crowns, which is I want to say it's a trilogy, however she is writing 2 more books, but although on Goodreads it says it's book 4 and 5, it's not focusing on the main girls anymore. I'm pretty sure it's like in the universe but different people that it's focusing on. But Twin Crowns is, as you can imagine, twins. They are separated at birth. One lives in a palace, one lives with witches. And just before their 18th birthday, the one with the witches has the one that's a princess kidnapped so that she can become a princess and restore restore the witches back to their place. I think it's called Ina, I want to say. That might be a different book that I'm reading because blur. At first, Ren's character was a lot more appealing to me. She was the adventurous one. She was the one that was a witch. She had powers. She's the one that snuck into the palace and is pretending to be a princess, even though she is technically she's a princess, but she is far from acting princessly. Whereas Rose chapters were, she just felt like a princess. She was a little bit of a brat. Yeah, okay. Yes, she's been stolen from her home, but I think her longing for a certain prince who gave me the ick within the first like 10 words that he spoke just had me like, really, Rose? Really? She redeemed herself, and she started to fight for herself a bit more, which I enjoyed. I just thought she was a bit of a wet blanket at first, which is definitely the point of the book. And what happens in the book is that you're getting both their points of view, so it swaps and swaps. So Wren's chapter ends, and usually on a cliffhanger, and then Rose's starts, and you're like, oh, Rose, why are you in the way? I just want to read the drama. But like I said, just pick up, and it does start like picking up from each other, and when they both come together. The frustrating part for me was that separately they were both like, oh, I hate this other twin because she stole me, or she's such a princess, blah 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 type thing. And then they come together, they have like a little bit of an argument, and they're like, you know what, we're friends now, it's cool. And that is such a sibling thing to do. They weren't even siblings until, like, Rose had no idea that she had a sister. Obviously Wren was aware, but Wren literally tells her what happened, and she's like, are you sure? Okay, yeah, I'll believe you. And it's so sisterly, and it's such a fun story, and it definitely ends in a cliffhanger. There is some romance in it, and then he ficks off somewhere, and really annoyed me. So August is the month that I will be reading the second book, because it's also a book club read, so we've just decided to read the second one as well next. So I'm really hoping that Wren and this other person, because I'm trying not to spoil things, Wren and this other person come back together, but we all know that she's gonna do something, and I am here for it. And it is currently like the 10th of August and I haven't started it, so I should probably get on with that because I'm behind on the book discussions as well. The next book that I read, and I had it up here so you'll see like an empty space now, was The Prospects by Katie Hoffman. That's K-T Hoffman, not Katie. I just speak too fast. This was a light, fluffy, fun book. I have never been into baseball. Now I want to read more baseball romance. If anybody's got any recs, that would be fantastic. It is about a trans male and a gay male, and they're on the same team, and they are in one of the lower leagues. They're trying to build up their careers, respect like each other's separately careers. They do not mean to fall for each other. It is flirty banter. There is some deep moments. There's a lot of mental health aspects as well, which I appreciated. There was one thing that frustrated me, and if you don't want spoilers, move on. The fact that Luis, I think it was, turned down the opportunity to go pro, and Jean was being a little bitch about it, and he was like, oh, I'm gonna be so upset if he leaves me, for Luis to turn around, and it was completely his own. It wasn't because of Jean, it was his own mental health. He didn't think he could handle it, so he was like, actually no, I'd rather just stay where I am. And I have a feeling that he was close-ish to retirement. Well, probably nearly 30, because all sports people retire at the age that I am now. And then Jean gets called up instead, And Jean's like, yeah, great, peace. Not in those words, but that's literally how I took it. And Louise is happy for him. Genuinely seems so happy for him. And I'm just like, how could you be a whiny little... I understand how, but I loved it. Loved it still. The next book that I read wasn't quite a book. It is a manga series. So I started Fairy Tail and I read volume 1. And let me tell you, this series is going to be a wild ride. I think the first one is in 4 parts, the first volume. There is a lot of sexuality in these books, and it's very typical manga. There is a lot of big-breasted women, and there is one point where there is a man that has been turned into an ape that is just obsessed with women, and he's like, ooh, boobies. But I like the magical aspect. I like the fact that the main guy, who I cannot recall the name of now because it's only been like, what, 2 weeks, he is just like, oh, I'm actually the salamander guy that everybody talks about. But I'm poor, so I need to do some jobs. But I am looking forward to seeing where on earth the story is going, because at the minute it's all over the shop, and I kind of like that hectic energy that it's got going on. The last book that I read in July was November 9th. Now, I find Colleen Hoover's books very hit and miss. I enjoyed Verity. I kind of enjoyed It Ends With Us. I didn't so much enjoy Ugly Love, and this one frustrated me so much. So it was what felt like to me a quick read, so I did actually rate it higher than you would assume from what I'm about to say. And if you don't want any spoilers, then just leave, because this is going to be a rant. So it starts off, we are in a diner, I think, or a cafe, some sort of vibe like that. Fallon is with her father, and they are basically arguing about her career. So she was following in her dad's footsteps, and she was becoming an actress, and then an accident, I'm gonna just say that, an accident happened, and there was a fire, and it basically caused scars over one side of her body, which her dad basically tells her that she is too ugly to act and she should do something else, and she's like, yeah, actually I'm leaving the city and I'm going to go pursue theatre instead. To which he's like, no, you can't act, you look at your face, is basically what he's saying. For somebody who's overhearing this in a booth behind them to then come over, dad's also saying like, you haven't been on a date for like years and blah blah blah, and she's like, I can't, I'm ugly, you keep telling me that I'm ugly, why would I want a date? So then the nosy person behind comes over and she's like, hey babe, and she's like, hello. So then he pretends to be a boyfriend just to get her dad to bugger off, which, I mean, is kind of sweet, but it's very presumptuous of him to invade their chat and to be listening to their conversation. There is a reason for this, and I will get to that, because it's sort of like the book sort of circles round on itself. So she's like, okay, I'll roll with it. Her dad buggers off, and she's like, do you know what? Thanks. I feel a little bit better. Peace out. And he's like, can I take you on a date? And she's like, I'm literally leaving the city, like, tonight. And he's like, no, it's fine. We've got time. So she, for some reason, agrees. And they go back to her place. And she's like, let me just get changed. And then you can take me to dinner or whatever. And he's like, cool. So then he finds a dress for her and says, you should wear this. She goes, no, this is too revealing. I'm not comfortable with this. And he says, and it's not these exact words, but it's basically these words, I don't care. You need to wear this dress because I'm paying for dinner and I want to look at something pretty. So you have to wear this dress. And she's like, no, I'm not comfortable in that dress. I do not want to wear this dress. And he's basically like, I don't care. He goes over and he starts stripping her. She is crying whilst he is stripping her and putting this dress on her. And she's just stood there absolutely like sobbing, like, I don't want this to be happening. And this was within 25, 30 pages. Like, this is meant to be our love interest, and he does not know the first thing about consent. He's like, you are stripping, you are wearing what I want you to wear, and we are going to dinner. And then for some reason she's like, let's talk, let's just like get on, let's get to know each other. Then they're falling asleep, can't even remember how, but they missed dinner. And she's like, I need to leave. And he's like, can we talk? And she's like, my mum told me to not go out with a boy until I'm 23 because that's when we learn to know each other, so like know ourselves, so no. And he's like, so we're not going to talk at all ever? And she's like, no, sorry, because then I'll just want to come back and I don't want to come back. So he's like, well, how about we meet? Oh, he's also writing a book. Like, that's kind of relevant, but at this point I really didn't care about him, so I didn't pay that much attention to him. So he's like, okay, well, how about we meet at this same spot next year, the same place that we met next year, on the same date at this time, and we can just catch up and we'll see how our lives are getting on. And she's like, yeah, cool, sounds like a good plan. In my head I'd be like, oh yeah, just agree with whatever he says and then run. So she agrees to meet him, and the first year that they meet up, she is 2 hours late, I think. I think she had like a delayed flight or something and she had no way to contact him, and by the time she'd set off he wouldn't have been there at the place or whatever. So anyway, once she lands she phones him and she's like, oh my god, well, she phones the restaurant like, oh my god, I wish he's still there. And he is still there. 2 hours this boy waited, and if he wasn't such a creepy creeper in the first like 30 pages or something, I'd be like, oh, actually that's kind of sweet. But also in hindsight it is still kind of creepy. Like, he's literally like hanging on, waiting for this girl who was abused by him in the first hour of them meeting. So anyway, she does eventually turn up and they have a nice time, and she's like, you meet me where, I think is she in like, I don't know where she's gone. But in the second year, she waits for him and he doesn't turn up. And he does ring her and he's like, oh, do you remember Kyle that you met last year at my house? Which I should have mentioned in the first year, they went back to his house. Kyle, my brother, he's just died 2 weeks ago and I'm too distraught about it to even bother. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, no, do you know what, I completely understand, I'm so sorry this happened to you. You go be with your family. And they hang up, and then she goes, do you know what, upon reflection, he should have been turning up today, so I'm going to go get a flight and I'm going to turn up at his house uninvited and surprise him. Which actually goes down quite well because he's like, actually, I needed a distraction, so thank you. I would say this scene's quite cute, but again, I just don't like him, so I'm not gonna say it. But they end up having some times together. And the next morning she's going to fly home, but she's like, do you know, actually, I really want this to work, and I do actually really like him, so fuck the wait till I'm 23 thing, and we'll exchange numbers or emails or something, and we'll just do a long distance thing. And he's like, yes, great. He goes somewhere to maybe have a shower or something, and she goes to see Jordan, who is Kyle's wife. And she's also pregnant with a baby. So she's speaking to her, and she's like, Jordan's like, oh my god, isn't it great that he's got like a book deal? And Fallon's like, oh, I didn't realise that he had a book deal. And John's like, yeah, he just needs to get on with it and complete his book, and then he's got a book deal. Now, in Fallon's brain, she goes, I can't stay with him then, because he's writing a book about our romance, and it's not going to be long enough if he hasn't finished it yet. So I need to break up with him, and I need to leave him alone. So she jogs on, and she's like, guy actually decided no, goodbye. Then the next year that they meet up, this one's a wild ride. So the third year that they meet up, he brings a child with him, Jordan's child. Fair enough, he's brought his nephew, that's quite cute. The nephew's 6-ish months. He is talking about this child, and he basically says, when we have the little night recording baby monitor, he basically says, when we have the baby monitor on at night and we watch him and blah blah blah, and she sat there thinking, we watch him, our baby monitor, our this, that and the other, and it just like the cogs slowly turn, and she's like, oh my god, he's with Jordan. Ben is with his dead brother's wife, and he's raising his nephew as his stepson, or just his son. I don't know. Now, I understand two people grieving can just like accidentally like mush together, but so then Benjamin, because he's getting his freaking full name, I don't even care if that's not his full name, Benjamin, turns round and says, if you tell me that you love me, I will leave her. And Fallon's like, hey guy, I am not going to be the reason that this child has a broken home. Like, he's like, him and Jordan have already been through enough with losing, like, she's lost her husband, he's lost his father. Like, I'm not going to do that to them again. So, no, I'm out. I'm not doing it. Goodbye. For Benjamin to then basically follow her to, I can't remember where she goes, but he basically follows her, and he's like, I love you. I've broke it off with Jordan. Jordan completely understands, because she wasn't really into me as much as she was at my brother. So it's all cool. It's fine. We can be together. So then they're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Let's be together then. I'm pretty sure they do the deed again. And then Nosy McNoserson, I would also be nosy, goes and starts rifling through his stuff, as you do, and she finds his manuscript. And she sits and she reads the first few pages of a manuscript, which is basically him admitting to being the person who set the fire and destroyed 30% of her body. So she bails. Finally, she's got some fucking logic in her head that she's like, yeah, I'm out, goodbye. So he then tries to win her back. She immediately goes and files a restraining order. Fantastic, great, good on you. That is exactly what you should have done 3 years ago, or whatever it was. And then he sends her his manuscript with like a note or something that says, please just read the full thing. And she just like sort of leaves it at the side because she's like, I can't do this, like, ew, boy. For her to wake up one morning to her mother reading it, and her own mother turns around and goes, oh honey, you should actually read this because like he's been through some things. And she's like, yeah, so far my face is freaking mutilated because of the fire that he set. And her mum's like, just forgive him. And she's like, no. And she's like, just read it. So she reads the manuscript, which basically says that Benjamin's mother and her father were together. His mother killed herself, and Ben basically blamed Fallon's father for him killing himself. And at the time he was an angry teenager, and he wanted to see who this guy was that his mother was so madly in love with that she just like had to kill herself because she couldn't be with him. So he goes and basically stalks him, and then once the dad's out the garage, he sets fire to his car, I think is what happens. Not knowing that anybody's inside, and he's automatically gone. Kyle, it now makes sense why Kyle punched him when he saw Fallon, because Kyle was aware of what Ben did. And basically, obviously, he didn't mean to harm anyone, but he did set the fire. So then she's like, oh, okay, that's a bit, my dad is a very annoying person and he didn't mean to. And then later in the book it's revealed that actually his mother had cancer, and that's why she killed herself, because she decided that she'd rather not go through the chemotherapy and B, not pay for it, because she wanted her boys to like be better off and not waste all their money on that, which is absolutely lovely for a mother to do when she knows her son is going to be the one to find her dead body. So fantastic. So Fallon decides, oh, do you know what, he's been through a lot, so actually maybe we should just make another go of it. And then they get back together. Now, all I could think is, if these two get married and have children, can you imagine your child turning around to you and saying like, oh mum, why did you get these scars? And you go, right son, well, your dad gave me these scars when he was a teenager because he set Grandad's car on fire without knowing that I was around, but he didn't mean to scar me. He was just upset because Grandad was actually shacking up with Grandma, and Grandma killed herself, and Ben thought and Daddy thought it was because of your Grandad, so he set his car on fire and scarred me. But do you want to go around to cousin, brother, child's house because actually your dad used to date your cousin's mother too, so that must have almost been your brother. Anyway, that concludes July's books. It started on a pretty high, and I did give November 9 higher stars. I think I give it like 3. Yes, I give it 3 stars, which is pretty much 3.5 stars, because whilst I didn't like the characters and I didn't like the ending, the book did have me hooked to it, and I hated the storyline but also enjoyed it at the same time, if you get me. Like, I would not have such strong feelings about a book that was just so because I rate it on characters and on like the atmosphere and the world as well as like other things, those areas didn't get as high as the plot and the other things. But I wouldn't say it's a terrible book, it's just terrible things happen in this book, and I do not like how they got together in the end, because yes, it might have been an accident, however he is still the one that caused her so much pain, and all her issues stemmed from, well, not all her issues, but a lot of her issues stemmed from this one incident that her boyfriend caused. So that is my reading. that is my July.